Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning worship service brought to you from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. I'm Janelle Mancuso, and I will be leading our service this morning. I joined the UUCY about 2 years ago. After growing up in York and moving away for some time, I returned to the area with my husband, and we enjoy being a part of this community, and we are excited to be able to worship in person and see all of you in person. We're grateful for the efforts that UUCY has put into providing this virtual service and the virtual community that we've been able to maintain since our lives have been impacted by COVID-19. So welcome everyone, it's nice to be here with you all. As Unitarian Universalists, we are members of a liberal religious faith. Our faith is a living tradition of deeds, not creeds. And with spring just 3 short weeks away, we are ready to enjoy some warmer weather, breathe some fresh air, and look forward to the time when we can get together on Sunday mornings in person again. This morning is the last Sunday of our annual pledge drive, and later on in the service today, during our offertory, we will share a reflection by some of our members on why it's important to make a financial pledge to the church. If you are a member or a pledging friend and you haven't filled out your stewardship form yet, we ask that you do so and return it to us as soon as possible. Our board is preparing our annual congregational budget for the upcoming church year that begins on July 1st, and your pledges are important to the planning process. Reverend Terry, our board members, and our committee chairs appreciate the time, talent, and treasure that our members and friends contribute to the ministry of our congregation. Hello, welcome back everyone. I always enjoy the small group opportunities, and I'm excited to learn more about some future ones coming up that I know Reverend Terry and Matt are working on, providing opportunities for us to gather more in small groups to strengthen this already great UUCY community that we have. As is customary whenever Unitarian Universalists gather together, we begin by lighting a candle. Our candle flame represents the flaming chalice that is the symbol of the living tradition of our faith. We also invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice lighting words. Okay. Our chalice lighting words today were written by Reverend Dr. David Breeden. Reverend Breeden is Senior Minister of First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Hymn to the Light. Our light is the light of the sun, keeper of all we love. Our light is the light of the earth, provider of sustenance. Our light is the light of all living things, life precious like our own. Our light is the light of each of us, bound together in need and hope. Our light is the light of the cosmos, keeper of all we know.
Well, good morning again, everybody, and once again, thank you for joining us for our Sunday morning worship service brought to you from the Unitarian Universalist congregation here in York. My name is Reverend Terry Cummings, and it's my pleasure to be the minister of this congregation. In 3 weeks or so, we will be marking 1 year since the COVID pandemic caused us to suspend temporarily in-person worship services and bring you our services via Zoom. A year of our being together and apart at the same time. It's been an amazing year. So much has gone on in that time. You don't need me to share with you all of those things. And the pandemic didn't stop and wait for anyone. All of us who are experiencing sickness or depression or struggle during the year, that didn't stop. It kept on. So all of you have been resilient and have kept your faith and your courage together for an entire year. And so this week I decided it would be good to take a break from some of the themes of our services and focus on something very important to all of us, the subject of happiness. And as I researched for this service this week, all of the sources that I read pointed to one thing as the biggest source of our happiness, and that is gratitude. Giving thanks in our daily lives for the things that we have. And so our opening words today, I selected a responsive reading from the Grey Hymnal. I can't wait until we can be back in person and do responsive readings again together. But I will read the whole thing for you. It's number 515 from our Grey Hymnal. We lift up our hearts in thanks. For the sun and the dawn which we did not create, for the moon and the evening which we did not make, for food which we plant but cannot grow, for friends and loved ones we have not earned and cannot buy, for this gathered company which welcomes us as we are, from wherever we have come, for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, truth, and love, for all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship. We lift up our hearts in thanks this day. So I'd like to share a story with you today. A story about a Buddhist monk who actually lived hundreds of years ago. His name was Milarepa, and he lived in Tibet in the high mountains of the Himalayas. Milarepa was a teacher and a Buddhist monk, and he had a cave that he would go to and teach and meditate for months on end. You can still go to that cave today if you go to Tibet and pay a guide to take you there. This is a story about Milarepa's cave and how Milarepa dealt with some demons. And it's instructive to all of us on how we might deal with our own demons. One day, Milarepa left his cave to gather firewood. When he returned, he found that his cave had been taken over by demons. There were demons everywhere. His first thought upon seeing them was, "I've got to get rid of them." He lunges towards them, chasing after them, trying forcefully to throw them out of his cave. But the demons are completely unfazed. In fact, the more he chases them, the more comfortable and settled in they seem to be. Realizing that his efforts to run them out of the cave have failed miserably, Milarepa opts for a new approach and decides to teach them the Buddha Dharma. If chasing them out won't work, maybe hearing the teachings of the great Buddha will change their minds and get them to leave. So he takes his seat and he begins teaching them about existence and non-existence, compassion and kindness, the nature of impermanence. After a while, he looks around and he realizes that all the demons are still there. They simply sit there and stare at him with their huge, bulging eyes. Not a single one is leaving. At this point, Milarepa lets out a deep breath of surrender, knowing now that these demons will not be manipulated into leaving, and that maybe he has something to learn from them. He looks deeply into the eyes of each demon and bows. "It looks like we're going to be here together. I open myself to whatever you have to teach me." In that moment, all the demons except one disappear. One huge and especially fierce demon with flaring nostrils, dripping fangs, is still there. Most of us, many of us, maybe all of us, know a demon like this in our lives. So Milarepa decides to let go even further. Stepping over to the largest demon, he offers himself completely, holding nothing back. "Eat me if you wish." He places his head in the demon's mouth, and at that moment, the largest demon bows and dissolves into space. Thus ends our story.
We've come to the moment in our service where we ask you to make a financial contribution to the church. Your generosity helps to defray UUCY's operating expenses and also helps out organizations in our community that are engaged in the work that is keeping with our Unitarian Universalist principles and values. Our Share the Plate partner during the month of February is YWCA and York County's Racial Justice Program. The YWCA is dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We ask that you please be as generous as you can, and no donation is too small. Your financial gifts will be used wisely and well. In a moment, instructions for giving electronically will appear on your screen. But first, we have a testimonial video from some of our members in support of our stewardship drive.
I'm Jean Truthart, CEO of YWCA York. YWCA York's mission places us at the center of imperative work that we need to be doing in our community and really in our nation right now. Our mission of eliminating racism and empowering women is incredibly important. It's not all the work we do. We also promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. This work, as you know, requires courage and conviction. That makes us kindred organizations with the UUCY. Your community was among the very first to take a stand, a public stand, with Black Lives Matter. It was a bold move, and it was energizing for all of us on the same justice path. Our racial justice work over the next year is going to really be two-pronged. The first is internal work. We've launched an equity plan, and we know this is going to be, for YWCA York, a real journey of discovery and reconciliation. The second is the work that we do in the community. We're holding monthly courageous conversations this year on topics like board diversity, recruiting more diverse board members, why more women don't run for elected office, and supporting Black-owned businesses. This just takes us into the spring. We would love to partner with the UUCY on a jointly facilitated future courageous conversation. Race Against Racism will again be a virtual event this year, coming up in April, and leading up to that will be a 14-day equity challenge. All of these events will be shared on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. What we offer to the community in our racial justice work, we do for free, with the exception of Race Against Racism. This is a way we feel to empower, educate, and heal Black, Indigenous people of color. It's an equitable way of doing our work. So we invite the UUCY to be one of these supporters and contributors to our racial justice work, in particular the 14-day equity challenge coming up in April. This is a daily learning opportunity for racial and social justice issues that are important to all of us and that impact our world, like education, criminal justice, health, economic equity, and more. Your support of YWCA York will help make possible a successful equity challenge. Let's figure out ways in which our organization can continue to leverage the great work that we are doing together and have impact in our community. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Diane and Tom Kearney, your stewardship chair people.
Today is February 28th, the day the pledge drive comes to a close. We hope that you have sent in your pledge form, but if you haven't, please do it right after the services or sometime this week. It's really important to get your pledge in. Diane and I need to inform the board and our budget preparers of the pledge total. Their role is to prepare a realistic budget for the next fiscal year, and they can't do it without the pledge figures. So do it today and don't delay.
Think of all the wonderful services and activities UUCY provides us all year through. And we all have dreams of how much more we would love UUCY to do and to grow in numbers and social impact. So please be as generous as you can be.
By the middle of March, Diane and I will have had the opportunity to review all the pledge forms and figures and to let you know how successful we were this year. So stand by for the update.
Our reading today is a poem by Mary Oliver entitled Happiness. In the afternoon, I watched the she-bear. She was looking for the secret bin of sweetness, honey that the bees store in the tree's soft caves. Black block of gloom, she climbed down tree after tree and shuffled on through the woods. And then she found it, the honey house deep as heartwood, and dipped into it among the swarming bees, honey and comb. She lipped and tongued and scooped out in her black nails until maybe she grew full or sleepy, or maybe a little drunk and sticky, down the rugs of her arms, and began to hum and sway. I saw her let go of the branches. I saw her lift her honeyed muzzle into the leaves and her thick arms, as though she would fly, an enormous bee, all sweetness and wings, down into the meadows, the perfections of honeysuckle and roses and clover, to float and sleep in the sheer nest, swaying from flower to flower, day after shining day. Thus ends our reading.
Truth as ends all strife, such a life as killeth not.
I'm going to ask you to imagine a world in which every single person was happy. All 7.5 billion human beings able to say fully and open-heartedly that they experienced happiness and joy every day. What would that world look like? Would it be a world that resembled the American dream, where everybody had a house with a 2-car garage and 2.7 children? Or would it look like something else, some kind of utopian dream where everybody lived by the ocean and walked in the sand and enjoyed sunshine? Or would it look pretty much like the world looks today? A world in which we have noisy neighbors, we have to go to work, people die and get sick. I think a world in which everyone was happy would probably look more like the latter. But it would be a world in which there was less conflict, less stress, more peace. And over time, a more peaceful, less stressful world would come to look very different than the world in which we live today. The American Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Our Constitution guarantees the right to pursue happiness, but then why is it, I wonder, why so many people among us seem to feel that they're unhappy? We saw that on January 6th when our country's capital was assaulted by insurrectionists. How do we define the term happiness? Let's start there. I've been reading a book lately by Sonia Lyubomirsky called The How of Happiness, a new approach to getting the life you want. She is a writer and a therapist and a researcher. She defines happiness this way: the experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. Let's dwell on that for just a few seconds. The experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. Feeling content and feeling that your life has meaning. In 1940, 1/3 of the homes in America didn't have running water, indoor toilets, bathtubs, or showers. In 1940, people over the age of 25 had only a 40% chance of having completed 8th grade, only a 25% chance of having completed high school, and only a 5% chance of having gone to college. Yet in a survey, 75 out of every 100 people who responded reported that they were very happy. Let's fast forward to now. The typical middle-class home or apartment has hot and cold running water, 1 or 2 or maybe even more bathrooms, a dishwasher, a refrigerator, a washer and dryer, and all of the modern conveniences, a television, internet, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, more people than ever are graduating from college and even going on to do second degrees. And yet, 80 years after the survey I just mentioned, roughly 72 people out of every 100 report that they are very happy. Clearly, these changes have not materially increased our sense of well-being and worthwhileness. I do not want to diminish the value of these things in our lives that I just mentioned. In Texas a few weeks ago, when people lost their running water and their heat and electricity. It was awful. I was appalled when I read that one mayor of a town in Texas had basically accused all the people who were complaining of being whiners. That was terrible. And I am sure that those people who experienced those deprivations felt unhappy, and deservedly so. I know I would. And when their power and their water comes back on, a measure of happiness will return. But it will be short-lived, because research has shown that things like winning the lottery or being beautiful or having lots of money, these things that increase our material well-being and comfort, they are short-lived in terms of how they impact our feelings of happiness. So I'd like to introduce you to a happiness pie chart. I'm going to ask you to imagine in your mind's eye a pie chart cut into 3 big slices of pie. If you do an internet search for the happiness pie chart, you will find many versions of it, and also a version of it that's referred to in the book that I just referred to you to, The How of Happiness. There are 3 slices of the pie in the pie chart. 50% of our happiness, according to the pie chart, depends upon our genes. It's just how we're born. Remember, these are averages. Not every person falls into exactly these same percentages, but on average, 50% of our happiness depends upon our DNA. Researchers found identical twins who'd been separated at birth and lived their lives, and then decades later they interviewed them and found that their levels of happiness were roughly similar. Unfortunately, we are stuck with our genes. There's nothing we can do to change them. They make us who we are. Some of us are born optimistic. Some of us are born more like Eeyore in Winnie the Pooh, ever glum and pessimistic. According to the pie chart, only 10% of our happiness comes from our lives' daily circumstances. Do we have a good job? Do we have a good home? Good health? Are we wealthy or poor? Are we married or single? These are things over which we have some control, but not really that much. And they only play roughly a 10% impact on our overall sense of happiness. Social class, gender, race, all have an impact on our situation and circumstances in life, and directly impact our experience of happiness. That's one of the many reasons that we Unitarian Universalists care so much about undoing the oppression of racism, classism, patriarchy. So 60% of our chances of being happy are due to circumstances outside of our control. That's the bad news. The good news is that 40% of our chances of being happy lie in things that we can control. And this has an enormous impact on our ability to experience happiness. 40% of our happiness is an internal state of mind. How do we harness the mental ability to achieve a level of happiness? First, let's dispel 3 myths. Myth number 1, that happiness is something that can be found, that we must pursue it. Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, obviously hadn't read the book. Happiness is not something you pursue like an exit off the interstate. Happiness is there within us. Myth number 2, that we can be happy by changing our life circumstances, by winning the lottery, finding the perfect mate, getting a better job. Research has shown that these effects on our happiness are quite temporary. 5, 10, 15 years later, people were no more or less happy than they were before these events took place. Myth number 3, that our happiness is preordained. We either have it or we don't, like some kind of Calvinistic punishment that was designed before you were born. You were destined to be happy or not. Not true, because of the 40% control we do have over it. Happiness is ours to find if we can. I'll read from her book. Lyuba Mirsky states, "The fountain of happiness can be found in how you behave, what you think, and what goals you set every day of your life." I've been struggling with this myself over the last several months during the pandemic. It's been a really difficult time for all of us. I've been looking for things to do to occupy my mind, to take my mind off my own daily trials. I found that puttering in my wood shop gives me great joy. For the last several months, I've been puttering around with tools and pieces of wood. I have nothing to show for it yet. I haven't built anything. But it's been a way of finding joy and bringing happiness into my life. There are other ways and other things that we can do to make our lives happy. I know some people in this congregation who would be very happy going mountain climbing or doing skydiving. Those things are not for me. But a way to achieve happiness is to identify the things we like to do and do them. They can be very fulfilling and rewarding. And there are other things we can do to achieve more happiness. Practicing acts of kindness, for example. Doing things to help people make us feel good. Avoiding comparisons to other people. Don't look at other people and say and compare yourself to them. Some of the best advice I got a long time ago was to ask myself how far I had come over the course of my life, not where I was in comparison to somebody else. Cultivate optimism. Look at the glass half full, not half empty. That's an old trope, but it takes work and it helps. There are other strategies for achieving happiness. Learning to forgive people. Savoring everything life has to bring every day of your life. But the most important way to achieve greater happiness is to feel gratitude. To feel gratitude every day for all the things that life brings you. To feel grateful just for the sun coming up, for the stars at night, for the weather. We talk about the weather being good or bad, but every day's weather is different. The weather we experienced today, the raindrops that were falling on our heads this morning, they won't be the same raindrops next time it rains. Every day is different. There are so many ways to feel and express gratitude. I've come across in the last few weeks a Benedictine monk. His name is David Steindl Rast. I will type his name into the chat box at the end of our service. And I encourage you to find some of his TED Talks and some of the things that he's written about gratitude and how bringing gratitude into our daily lives can make us happy. His point is this: we do not express gratitude because we are happy. We are happy because we are grateful. I don't want today to imply that simply doing a few steps can lead to happiness. That would make me as insincere as some of the commercials we see on television that say, buy this or do that and your lives will be happy. I'm not saying that. What I'm sharing is that there are ways, steps we can take that take time and effort to make ourselves feel happier, more content in the moment, even in this time of pandemic and struggle in our country. And I'm also not trying to suggest that just thinking on the bright side and being grateful, can cure us of depression. Depression is a serious illness. It should not be stigmatized. It requires help to overcome it. But even for those of us who are depressed, there are things we can do to help us with our depression, that our therapists can help us through and see. So I am deeply grateful for my life. This past December, around Christmas time, I felt a little bit depressed myself. I knew I was depressed because I was in a conversation with somebody around Christmas, and all of a sudden, I started to cry, and I couldn't figure out why it was or where it was coming from. I realized afterwards that I was feeling a little bit depressed. I'm over it now. I've taken care of it. But one of the things that I did and do every single day is give thanks for my life, for all the things that I have. And I'm deeply grateful for every single one of you. I'm deeply grateful that I have stories like Mirapel's Cave that help me realize that there are demons that I need to accept and live with. Practice gratitude. Practice love. See how it feels. May it be so.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I found two sets of closing words for you this week that I couldn't decide between, so I decided to share both of them. The first is a poem by Emily Dickinson called "How Happy is the Little Stone." How happy is the little stone that rambles in the road alone and doesn't care about careers and exigencies, never fears, whose coat of elemental brown a passing universe put on, and independent as the sun, associates or glows alone, fulfilling absolute decree in casual simplicity. And our second closing words are from the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 9, verse 7. Go eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love, find ways to be happy. We'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us today.